Oh, I don't know why anybody would talk about themselves in this way. The first impression you get of Jamie Gold is her hostile takeover of LexCorp. So the first way she describes herself is hostile, and then has to correct herself. Further describing herself in not really great terms, she mentions her muse, an arrogant male who delights in making her sound as insane as possible. So she's hostile, possibly insane, and then fueled by chocolate. Look, none of us are weird, but I don't think I would ever want to describe myself as hostile, especially if I'm writing romance. That's not very endearing, but to each their own brand, I guess. Hello, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick, and today we'll be looking over Jamie Gold's article on how the RWA could fix itself, and I'll also give a few suggestions of my own for how RWA and other writing organizations like it can recover from the turmoil, because the SFWA has also fallen sometime before this. I specifically wanted to go over this article because I linked it in my last video about the RWA, which, if you haven't been following the story of the Romance Writers of America drama, I will link them in the description and at the end of the video so you can check it out for yourself. But I linked this article in the description of the last video, not because I agreed with it, but because it was another thing on this subject, and I felt it was important that I respond to it to show exactly where my disagreements lie, and because Jamie Gold here is trying to give an antidote to what has happened to the RWA, and I think her suggestions are very misleading and actually damaging to the organization if it wants to recover and continue being an organization for romance authors. With that being said, let's jump into the article and get started with the breakdown. Considering this article is so out of date, I'm going to skip the starting two paragraphs that just kind of summarize what had been going on at the time and start off with where she starts. And start off with where this article actually matters. Every day, more people are asking the question, can RWA be saved? And if so, how? Let's take a look at the extreme amount of work RWA would need to complete in order to re-earn members' trust. Step 1, understand the many problems to overcome. Before we can come up with a to-do list for fixing RWA, we first need to reorganize the many problems RWA would need to overcome. Yes, the initial wave of protest was prompted by the organization's reaction to an ethics complaint about calling out racism, but as mentioned last time, the wave has been followed by more revelations that add to the members' disgust and anger. RWA leadership and staff have lost all benefit of the doubt. Now, this should be the most alarming for anybody in the RWA leadership, is that there is not going to be any pleasing these people, because from the start, they all demonize you. They don't want to be your friends. They don't give you the benefit of the doubt, and they don't think that you're doing the right thing or care to do the right thing. So I think the most important thing that you could do in this situation is stop listening to them. They don't think that you're good people. That's why they looked at your cover about helping somebody get to a higher plane using your better footing and saw it as racism, because they don't believe that you're good people that will try to do the right thing. This straight up says you don't get the benefit of the doubt. Where do you go when the person you're interacting with doesn't believe that you have any good moral standing in your heart, that they don't think that you want to do anything that is right? Where do you go from there? It's a setup for emotional manipulation, and it is a setup for moral manipulation, because you'll say, well, I'm going to propose doing this thing, and they'll go, yeah, no, that's racist, because they're just assuming everything you do is evil. Every suggestion you make that is not their suggestion is going to be evil. And even when you give in to them, they're going to use it over their heads. They're going to hold it over your heads that you made the decisions for them, and you don't actually believe in it. You're just trying to appease them. You're setting yourself up for a continual blackmail, where they'll wait for you to mess up, and if you don't do exactly what they say, they're going to go out and use social media to try to cull another attack against you or your associates. She continues to prove my point here by saying, most importantly, nothing can or will happen until those in charge realize that no one trusts them. You are never going to earn their trust back. They might never have trusted you in the first place. So far, the RWA's communications have assumed people will give them the benefit of the doubt. However, even if they do the right thing at this point, if it is not done with radical transparencies, member members will assume it's all lies and done for ulterior motives. Here they are saying that it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to assume that you're just doing it for ulterior motives, which is usually going to be assumed to quiet down the mob and that you don't actually believe in what you're doing. There's no winning here. The two in charge people at the RWA both have hellfire level dark clouds hanging over their reputations, especially when it comes to ethical matters or acting in RWA's interest. Number one, it appears that the now president Damon Swade, who at this point has resigned already, lied his way into the position by falsifying the required publishing history, possibly with the help of his publisher, Dreamspinner Press. Number two, the executive director, Carol Ritter, is at the center of many reports of discrimination. She's also believed responsible for moving the ethics complaints forward despite the many reasons they were invalid and contained lies. Notice how there are no links or anything for Miss Carol Ritter here to prove whatever it is they're trying to say. They're saying that she is at the center of a bunch of reports for discrimination. No link. She says she shouldn't have moved the ethics complaints forward because of whatever reason. No information there. It's just a way to try to stop this from moving forward to protect certain people in the correct circle, and that is, of course, in this case, Courtney Milan's circle. In addition, the limited messaging coming from RWA has misled members about the extent of their legal audit, which they've been touting as their solution to this implosion. The former RWA president and board members have been expressing concerns about policy discrepancies, weren't impressed with the largely incompetent response from the current board, especially as direct conversations with the law firms doing the audit give a different impression of the audit's scope. So again, this is just furthering, they're never going to trust you. It doesn't matter what you do. Your audit can come out and say, hey, everything that we did was justified, and they're going to go, you're lying, and the person that you hired to do the external audit is corrupt. It doesn't matter what you do. Here we have extensive, and we're still in understanding the many problems, by the way. So the next extensive problem that they mentioned, or the next many problem that they mentioned, is extensive reports of discrimination. This point is obvious as it kicked off the whole implosion, but as I mentioned last time, the RWA has a long history of dismissing valid concerns of those not in power, from ignored ethics complaints to rudeness from the staff and leadership. Many members and former members have been mistreated over the years. Again, there is no reference here, no evidence, no referrals that we can look at for ourselves. I've worked with women before, and they can pick up a tone and a voice that's not there and say that you're being rude. So I'm sorry, but without hard evidence, this isn't a legitimate complaint. Continues, even in the midst of all this attention on how RWA treats racism, the official RWA forums have allowed posts displaying bigotry with no moderation in sight. The discrepancy between how they pushed through the ethics complaints against an exempt Twitter discussion, which started this whole mess, and how RWA's own forums are run hasn't been lost on most of the membership. So referring to this paragraph specifically, they say racism has been ignored, bigotry has been on display. If bigotry has been on display, where are the screenshots in this article that prove it? Because if they're in the forums, screenshot it, share it. So I'm going to have to say hard disbelief on that, hard doubt on that. And then number two, through the course of investigating this situation, we've discovered that bigotry and racism is also just considered liking Tucker Carlson, liking Charlie Kirk, supporting President Trump. Those things are all just considered bigotry and racism as a whole. So when she says that RWA treats racism and bigotry without any regard, I don't know what that means, other than maybe some members showed support for the president. Oh, and they've also called just writing somebody of a different race racism. Let's not forget Catherine Lynn Davis, who was attacked as a racist for writing mixed race Chinese women as a white woman herself. So any claims of bigotry or racism without evidence don't mean anything, because these people don't have a definition that means anything. They've already proven to us through this mess what racism and bigotry look like to them. And if you take it off of Twitter, it's not racism or bigotry to anybody but them. Here we've got another problem is severed industry relationships. In addition to the many members and chapters upset with RWA, many agents have cut their ties with the organization. Yesterday brought news of several publishers cutting their ties as well, which is significant as many of these publishers are major sponsors of RWA's annual national conference. Of course, it costs publishers nothing to not spend money at the conference, so their support, while nice, doesn't do much on its own. Only sourcebook statements include a stronger message about what those cut ties mean. Quote, "We commit to using the time, energy, and resources we could have supplied to National Conference on furthering diversity, equality, and inclusion efforts." Part of the tragedy of this whole situation is that without RWA to push publishers to do better, authors and diversity efforts will likely suffer even more. So this reads to me that they are using the RWA as an organization to push forward their personal agenda, as opposed to just writing books and just trying to get books published. They're using it specifically to push forward an agenda that is not book or creativity related. And then the last thing that they mention is extensive chaos to manage. The RWA board is structured so at least half of the members of the board experience at any time by using staggered 2-year terms. Even if a board member leaves their position mid-term, with a board of 16 members, at least 7 other members will know what they're doing to be able to lead the others. However, yesterday, additions to the chaos brought news of 3 more board members resigning. That means out of 16 original board members, only 4 remain, and one of those is Damon Suede, who again has resigned at this point. And so now we're going to get into Jamie Gold's suggestions to fix the problems she submitted above. Number 1, she wants to force resignations of people she doesn't like or approve of. This is pretty normal, and we've been seeing this happen, especially in college campuses, for the last couple of years when administrators or presidents of colleges don't give in to what the screaming mob has been saying. If you remember, was it at Yale where somebody said, hey, if you don't like, there was an email that went out around Halloween that said, if you don't like somebody's costume, rather than reporting it to the administration, why don't you go talk to these people like adults and just say, I don't like your costume. And those people went and sought somebody's forced resignation because they weren't forcing an issue on adults. Suspend all non-critical activities to allow leadership and staff to focus on the rest of these priorities. Waive the restrictions on parties' ability to discuss executive sessions regarding these events so current and previous board members can speak transparently about the issues revealed by the implosion. This has actually, as far as I know, been done. We're going to go over any of the updates that have happened in the last week because I have that calendar pulled up or that website pulled up. And I'm pretty sure they either have already pulled the confidentiality or are in the process of pulling the confidentiality for the situation so that people can talk about it. Conduct an independent investigation into who did what, not only in regards to these current issues, but also with discrimination and ignored ethics complaints. That's actually happening as far as I know. Force out anyone involved with the problems found in the investigation. They're coming for you, Courtney. I'm just saying. Conduct an independent forensic audit to learn if any financial shenanigans were at the heart of these issues. Conduct an audit of the bylaws. Determine if any parties can be held legally liable for loss of value to RWA due to failure of fiduciary duty or related issues. That just sounds like it wants to be a warning to don't mess with us because we're going to ruin your life. I think Susan Tisdale, Catherine Lynn Davis, and Sue Grimshaw have a fine case for libel. Because of what's happened to Susan Tisdale's small press, it has been slandered, and these ladies have also lost opportunities because of this information. So at the very least, I'm pretty sure they have a legal case. RWA, we'll see. They're doing an investigation. Provide full, honest transparency of findings. I think that was mentioned above. Run a special election. Remaining board members should nominate and appoint winners for special election. Apologize to all affected parties. Part 2 of addressing the problems. She suggests conduct a review of bylaws. That was already mentioned. In part 2 of addressing the problem, she repeats conduct a review of bylaws, which is the same thing as the audit she mentioned. Review past several years of PRO and PAN applications. Review past several years of dismissed ethics complaints, review the past several years of ignored advocacy issues, fix the bylaws. That was also mentioned in the previous thing. Establish a system of confidential reporting of issues. Technically, that was supposed to be a thing already, as far as I know. The complaints from Susan Tisdale and Catherine Lynn Davis had been submitted in confidentiality, but somebody who didn't like those documents or those complaints leaked them to cause an issue. Now, I can't say that that is for sure. I can only say it as the gossip that I have heard. So take that as a grain of salt. But theoretically, there's already supposed to be confidential reporting. However, confidential reporting doesn't help when you have people who get emotional, who are playing sides, who want to out certain people because they don't have the right beliefs or they have the wrong ideas or they support the president. Confidentiality doesn't work if people are malicious for whatever personal reason. Humans, you can create the perfect system, introduce human beings, and they will ruin it with emotion. Maintain an attitude of transparency. And then we have Fix the Problems, Part 3, moving forward. Conduct member surveys to get buy-in. Decide once and for all what's acceptable and what's not. Decide the expectations of DEI practices for those who work for and serve members. And DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I will refer to this as DIE, though, and I will explain why these are DIE when I give my suggestions. Decide the level of DIE training to be shared with members. Decide once and for all what happens to members who violate the rules, which, again, this person just likes to repeat herself. Give authority to witnesses. I'm sorry, I don't believe in hashtag believe all women because humans lie and women are humans. But you give authority to evidence. Set expectation of industry partners for commitment and action towards DIE goals before engaging them in industry memberships. Update bylaws, policies, staff hiring practices, board committee eligibility, and policies for chapters. That was kind of already mentioned before. Establish structures and systems to further DIE goals. Establish regular DIE training. Maintain an attitude of transparency. Work with members to strengthen RWA's mission. Finally, after giving all of her suggestions, Jamie Gold says, is it really possible to fix the RWA? She says, that's obviously a lot, and that's just off the top of my head based on what I've been hearing from those sharing their concerns. In other words, yes, it is possible. And I also know that it's possible because in my comment section, I've had members for 20 years, shorter term members, a lot of longer term members that go, this is an establishment, this is an organization worth saving, and I want to see it saved. So it is possible to fix the RWA because there is a large group of people that want to save the RWA and see value in the RWA. But you're not going to fix it with Jamie Gold's suggestions, and I'll tell you why when I give you mine. RWA's implosion isn't something that can just wait to blow over. Technically it is, if you turn off the hysteria. These issues with RWA's leadership and staff have been building for a long time, and we all know that it's harder to re-earn broken trust than to establish benefit of the doubt in the beginning. As we've covered above, those currently in power at RWA don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Based on my experience, when somebody goes this hardcore into you don't deserve the benefit of the doubt, they don't plan to ever give you the benefit of the doubt ever again. They intend to use the guilt that you feel or the guilt that they can capture on you to get you to make decisions towards what they want until they eventually make you walk off the plank after they've put in their own things using your power. RWA has always relied on the strength of their members. A belief in volunteering and service is baked in, so the ability exists. The question is about their will and their attitude. But at the core, we all need to remember leadership and staff, especially at the RWA, belongs to the members. Despite this incredible amount of work, I'm not eager to let their extensive chapter organization and $3 million RWA has in reserve just disappear, even if contests, magazines, conferences, etc. all have to be shut down for a year while things are fixed and rebuilt. If the RWA could do this, if they could tackle the list and come out on the other side stronger and better than ever, they would become a model and beacon of hope to other organizations. And that happy ending is exactly the kind of inspirational tale we like in our genre. Smile. So one thing that I do want to mention is after visiting her page about the About Me page, where she's snarky and hostile and possibly insane, her brand is snarky, controlling, and hostile. Not really what you want to foster an organizational rebuild around. It's not a good foundation. So with that said, I'd like to give you my 5 suggestions for what I think the RWA can do to rescue itself And if you're sensitive, get ready to be offended because these are going to make you crazy. Number 1, put a man at the head of the organization. A logical, strong, straight man, possibly. He must be pragmatic because you need a pragmatist in the business leadership. Women tend to respond to crisis with emotion. Not all. I'm on the other side of that spectrum where I respond with thought. But generally, especially in creative industries, women respond with emotion. And you need someone leading the group who will not bend to emotional whims or appeasement or guilt, but enforce the rules as they are written. You need somebody who will not bend to emotional appeals. And actually, instead of just putting in one man, you probably need to put in a couple of other men to help give him backup, because he might go a little crazy if he's surrounded by very emotional women in every direction. When women get excessively emotional, other very emotional people being around them never really helps the issue. Usually, a bunch of emotional people being around each other kind of just creates a group hysteria, because one craziness does two crazinesses, does a bunch of crazinesses, and I'm using crazy in the loosest sense of the word. In order to best deal with crisis, you need people at the top of the organization who respond to crisis with reason and logic first, not emotion, be it fear, anger, shame, or sadness. You don't want your leadership to respond to emotion ever. That is how you sink a ship, because if your leadership is getting emotional and freaked out, then that trickles down, because your leader, your manager, your president, whatever, sets the tone for everybody underneath them. And so if you have specifically a pragmatic man at the top of the ladder, when stuff comes in that's kind of crazy, he'll go, it's okay, I'm going to take a look at this, and we'll go from there. However, if you have an emotional person, be it man or woman at the top, then when something crazy comes in like this, you go, oh no, somebody is hurt. I have to fix this. Oh no, they're angry at me. How can I appease them? How can I fix this with them on a personal level? So you need a man specifically to enforce the rules. Number 2, make the organization colorblind. Stop with all of the die programming, with the die attention. Stop it. No special treatment for where you're from, no special classes because of skin color. Everyone is equal when they come in the door. If you would be offended if a white person had the same special courses or sensitivity as fall and die training, then you're doing something wrong. They have problems. Does somebody have problems with you for whatever reason? You don't have to work with that person anyway, not in the long term. Forcing someone into submission will not create a prosperous business relationship for either of you. It will only create resentment. Now, why do I call it DIE? Well, one, they were the ones that came up with the acronyms of DEI, but I see it, and diversity, inclusion, and equity. When you switch your business model from focusing on the business itself, the organization, its purpose of, romance, creating writing, connections, creating writing ties, and helping teach people how to get into the business, how to prosper in the business, the different facets of writing romance. When you switch your goal from that into, well, we need to focus on skin color, we need to focus on race, we need to focus on anything other than the work itself, you're setting your organization up to die, because your organization is no longer a writing organization for romance. It is an ethnic organization for ethnic equality. And from there, it's really easy for it to become a Marxist organization, which is kind of what you're seeing now, as the white people are the bourgeoisie, and everybody who's not white is a proletariat who is trying to take down the bourgeoisie. That's a whole other thing. But it's best called diversity, because whenever you inject specifically diversity-related things into all of your processes, your business focus drifts and you doom your business. Number 3, focus entirely on storytelling, connections, and business. So this goes along with make everything colorblind and stop with the die training. Focus on what makes a good story. Focus on making business connections. Focus on the romance industry. Do those things. Over the last couple of years, whenever I've come across RWA articles, it's always been about more diversity and inclusion stuff. They're doing seminars on more diversity and inclusion. They are having all of these special things for diversity and inclusion. Stop doing that. Stop making a big deal out of somebody's race and just talk about writing. When everybody goes in, they're all romance authors of varying levels of popularity. That's it. Make it a writing organization again. Because you know what? This leads me into number 4. Don't involve politics in your policies or in your discussions within the organization. And yes, racial politics is part of politics. Look at what's happening with actual American politics and even UK politics and European politics in general. Bringing in this racial diversity and inclusion stuff is actually a political statement and a political position. So, number 4, to fix your organization, take out the politics from anything that has to do with the organization. This isn't to say that you can't express if you think the Orange Man is bad. Go ahead, have your field day on your Twitter about how you feel about the Orange Man, about how you feel about Boris Johnson, about how you feel about Barack Obama, whatever. Share your feelings. However, once you get into the organization or when you're interacting with others who are part of the organization, they are your business cohorts. And so you want to remain professional. This plays into number 2 and number 3. If you're going to be a writing resource, then be a writing resource. As you transform the organization from being romance and storytelling focused to being a political action committee by requiring and endorsing specific political ideas, you don't deserve the business deals that you had with agents or publishers that you, like Harlequin, that you once had. You've completely changed the focus. And that's what it looks like to me. Publishers are pulling away, not because you have the wrong politics or policies or because of the DIE stuff. There's not enough DIE training in your organization, but it's because you're an organization that was once focused on writing and romance stories specifically, and that's what they came to you for. However, it seems less focused on that now as politics permeate to the point that it can destroy your organization and cause this what, we're half a year long drama going on that's only getting bigger. So return the focus to the writing industry, specifically to the romance industry, and your writing companions will come back. Turn it into a PAC, however, or any other political-based organization, and you're going to lose your current connections in the creative industry while you transform your mission, more or less. And then my number 5 suggestion is maintain policy and professionalism. You don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to like everyone in the organization. You don't have to like every romance author because you're all romance authors. You can determine that you guys are so different that it's okay if you just say hi when you pass each other in the hallway and move on. Not everyone is meant to be friends or cohorts with everyone else, and that's fine. Using disagreements and opinions as a means to light someone's career on fire is immature and deplorable behavior. Just be professional when you see each other. You can just say hello and keep going. In most cases, if you're at a big conference, you don't even have to say hello because there are so many people going on that you can just keep walking. That is, unless somebody else says hello to you first, and then you politely say hello and you keep walking. There are a ton of authors right now who are fearful of publication because of cancel culture, being told they're appropriating, not staying in their lanes for the sin of not writing memoir. Yes, that's what we're being asked for when you say that you can only write what you've experienced. You want to turn the entire writing industry into memoir? Or at least ground certain authors of certain races to writing memoir while it's a free-for-all for everyone else? Okay, so then say that you follow those rules because you don't want to be canceled and you just write within your lane. You're a white author, so you just write white characters. Well, then you get dragged and canceled for being uninclusive and racist because where are the non-white people in your story? There is no way to win with these rules, so the best thing that we can do is not play. I want to go over this article from The Guardian that is, in fact, a year old. Thank you for letting us know, The Guardian. In this article, author Lionel Shriver says politically correct censorship is damaging fiction. We go down here. This was published in February of 2018, so it is almost 2 years old, actually, Guardian. And Lionel Shriver, the author of We Need to Talk About Kevin, has warned that politically correct censorship risks turning the world of fiction into a timid, homogenous, and dreary place, and called on her fellow novelists to take a stand against it. Writing in the March issue of Prospect magazine, Shriver said the authors in today's call-out culture are contending with a torrent of do's and don'ts that bind our imagination and make the process of writing and publishing fearful. She provoked provoked outrage in 2016 when she said in a keynote speech at the Brisbane Writers' Festival that she hoped the concept of cultural appropriation was a passing fad. Almost 2 years later, she has now written that preventing writers from conjuring lives different from their own, because if we have the right to draw on only our own experiences, all that's left is memoir. According to Shriver, the taboo around cultural appropriation has become a far bigger issue in literature than it was when she first took on the issue. She pointed to sensitivity readers who are hired by publishers to look at what she's called perceived slights to any group that is protected status once reserved for distinguished architecture, and to the own voice writers at Kirkus Review who reviewed titles that have characters from their own particular background. These days, straight white fiction writers whose characters' ethnicity, race, disability, sexual identity, religion, or class differs from their own can expect their work to be subjected to forensic examination, not only on social media, she said. And not only on social media, she said. The Orange Prize winner went on to highlight the propensity for umbrage to be taken in the modern age, citing cases including the decision by Black Lawrence Press in 2014 to drop Elizabeth Ellen from an anthology after she published a controversial essay elsewhere, the recent withdrawal in Minnesota of Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird from classrooms over fears of classics could marginalize and humiliate students, and her own experience of including a Black character in her short story in the late 2016 against the advice of her agent, who told her to replace the character with a white one. Now, wouldn't you think that's more offensive because you could just interchange a character based on their race, because that doesn't apparently make a difference to who they are? I would think so. The article continues, the story was declined by a magazine that Shriver said had published her in the past. Shriver highlighted her own feelings as someone with self-cited obstreperous streak a mile wide, as now more hesitant to fold a range of ethnicities, races, gender variants, and other classes into my work, and her fears that unless she pushes back against this, her fictional worlds will fail to reflect the world I live in. Quote, I've plenty of recent experience of using non-white characters in my novels only to have them singled out and scrutinized for thought crimes, she wrote. If even writers like me are starting to wonder if including other ethnicities and races in our fiction is worth the potential blowback, then fiction is in serious trouble. She said that it was impossible to gauge the degree of political correct censorship going on behind the scenes as publishing companies and literary agencies. She said that it was impossible to gauge the degree of politically correct censorship going on behind the scenes at publishing companies and literary agencies, with authors whose work is rejected left with uneasy suspicions about why their manuscripts might be attracting no takers, but with no hard evidence. Conversely, she said that it was equally impossible to gauge the extent of writers' collective self-censorship. Quote, the tetchiness and public shaming of call-out culture has to be influencing which subjects writers feel free to address and which they shy away from, as well as making many writers reluctant to include a diverse cast, she wrote. Rather than tiptoe through this minefield, plenty of writers must be playing it safe with characters, topics, and plots that won't get them in trouble. She pointed to a piece in The Guardian following her comments in Australia that saw contributions from, among others, Camilla Shamsi and Hari Kunzru, and was, according to Shriver, packed with equivocations, with Philip Hensher, the only writer willing to defend their liberty without a snowstorm of qualification. Shriver warned that if all modern literature comes to toe the same goody-goody line, fiction is bound to grow timid, homogeneous, and dreary, and called on her fellow authors and the book industry to make a stand. Quote, the whole apparatus of delivering literature to its audience is signaling an intention to subject fiction to rigid ideological purity tests unrelated to artistry, excellence, and even entertainment that miss the point of what our books are for. Let's see a little more courage, people, in the work and in the world. And you can see more of this with the thing that happened with Stephen King a couple weeks ago when he said, I care about artistry, not diversity, and he got attacked and eventually drew back. And this is what I'm doing here today. I want to encourage as many authors as I can to tell the stories that they have to tell, and I want you to know that you have support. You might not be able to find it as easily on the cesspool that is Twitter, but we are here. And in reading the comment section on this YouTube account, I have seen so many reasonable people, including people that consider themselves more liberal or more progressive, who are on the same page about this stuff, but can't speak out about it on Twitter because, well, you cross the Twitter mob and they come for you, even if you're in agreement with everything else. And before we close out the video, a little update on what's been going on in the RWA for the last week. So let's get into these. Courtney Milan has been busy, and in this January 17th, RWA responds to Courtney Milan's letter. January 18th, Courtney Milan releases another letter sent to her by the auditors handling the RWA's independent audit. January 19th, Courtney Milan receives a response to her previous letter from Nan Dixon, treasurer of the RWA. Joe Compton from Go Indie Now discusses RWA implosion on This Week in Indies. January 20th, Courtney Milan again posts response from Nan Dixon to her after she sent her concerns to the RWA. She recommends that the RWA speak to their legal counsel regarding the issue. Milan also asks for transparency. It is confirmed that the RWA National has not been canceled, and Las Vegas RWA chapter chooses to disband, citing issues with RWA and their unwillingness to affiliate with it. And then January 21st is our last update with Leslie Scantleberry appointing an interim executive director. So those are all of the updates so far as of recording this. This website, again, will be linked in the comments down below so that you can follow any of the updates or click any of these links on the information. Summarizing my 5 recommendations in case you just want a little tiny clip of what they are. Number 1, put some men in charge, some pragmatic men, not emotional men, because they do exist as well. Number 2, make the organization colorblind and end all die training or die programs. Number 3, focus entirely on storytelling, the industry, and the business. Number 4, include zero politics in the organization, period. Number 5, maintain the policies, be professional, even if you don't like somebody. And a secret number 6, for any of these political ideologues that are saying, well, we're going to end our thing because we don't agree with what you're doing, let them go and start over. The best possible thing that can happen for this situation right now is that all of the people that joined to make it a political movement exit themselves. They can go start their own political organization, and you are left with the people who care about storytelling. In an organization called the Romance Writers of America, what you want are the people who are there for storytelling and for romance and for the feel-good stories. You don't want anybody there who is there to push political reasons or political agendas. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Remember to like and share this video if you liked it. Subscribe for more content on writing related things. I promise it will not always be RWA related. This is just the big news right now. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.